This is Jennifer Butler, Community Leader at DivorceForce, and I am here today with our weekly chat. We are going to be talking today about getting out of the blame game. If you have had your heart broken in any way, you know how much it hurts. And if you've experienced something like being cheated on, or even just the divorce kind of blindsiding you, that hurt and that pain can feel even worse. So it can get really easy to fall into a cycle of blaming, complaining, and focusing on your ex and sort of what happened instead of really focusing on yourself. The problem is when you have this type of thinking, you can pretty much get yourself good and stuck for a really long time. So I am really excited to have Jill Sockwell here today. She is a former advertising copywriter. She's a top real estate sales agent, and she's the leader of the Maplewood Divorce Club. She went through her own divorce and ended up co-authoring the book called The Optimist's Guide to Divorce: How to Get Through Your Breakup and Create a New Life You Love. So Jill, thank you so much for being here. When I wanted to do this topic, I immediately thought of you. So just, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your story and the book.
Sure. Jersey, and I separated from my husband in 2010, and I couldn't believe the lack of resources. Me personally, like you mentioned, I have a background in advertising, so my instinct was to read my way through it. I figured with 1.5 million women getting divorced every year that there would be a lot of resources and that it would be easy to find support. And I was surprised. I think it's something you don't realize, the lack of accessible resources until you need them when it comes to divorce.
Absolutely.
So in 2010, I went to Barnes & Noble and I was shocked. There were plenty of clinical books written by therapists and counselors, but on that end, I found those kind of dry and not accessible and really lacking in warmth. I was looking for something that was kind of like I could walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, somebody who's been through it and could say, watch out for this, do this, don't do that. Here's how you pick a lawyer. I didn't know.
I don't think anybody knows.
Nobody knows if you. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, I felt like, there were so many really almost escapist memoirs, which was a great read and very entertaining, but didn't have a lot of advice,
wisdom.
So I kind of thought then and there, like, wow, like what am missing and what can I do about this someday? So as I would talk to more and more women, I was starting to get referrals almost for friends, like, oh, you should talk to Jill. She's separated. She can help you.
Yeah.
And from this, I realized how empowering it was. I had been introduced to Suzanne Riss, my co-author, and, we would go on these power walk and talks, and it made it better and easier. I didn't have anyone in my family who was divorced, really, and I didn't have close friends that were local that were divorced. And it's hard to talk about when you're just initially going through this. And so because she and I were in the same position, she also was separated, we really bonded over that. And then kind of had the epiphany, like what would happen if we kind of expanded this friendship that we have and these women that we're meeting, and we actually form a group or a club, like in our cute little suburb. Like, are there really enough women that would show up, or are we the only ones?
Right.
We had 50 people at our first meeting.
Wow.
Yeah. So the club has continued to kind of grow, and from that, it's just amazing how many people we meet, and almost, I would say, 3 or 4 people a week will write to me and say, hey, I heard about your group, or I was on Soma Lounge or something. My friend told me, and, I add them to the group. And what we have is a Facebook secret group. And the nice thing about that is day or night, you don't have to leave your house. If you're home with your kids, you can reach out and just say, hey, I'm going through this, or I need advice on that. And somebody can chime in and make you feel not alone.
Yeah, exactly. Because you feel very alone when you go through a divorce. And so having sort of that girlfriend's guide and that group really does feel supportive and helpful.
Because for some people, it's the only place where they can really talk about what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our group is women only. And I think, when you think about women and connecting, it's really no surprise that at every meeting, it's a matter of minutes before like complete strangers are like, well, this happened. And this,
Yeah.
oh, me too. Oh my gosh. No, he got you that book too.
Right.
It's like a total blab fest, and it's really great, and it's empowering. And I think it makes you feel, it takes this notion that divorce is lonely and isolating and just flips it on its
Yeah,
head.
flips it on its side. So let's talk about the book a little bit as we kind of move into, talk about blame. But you structured the book into 3 sections: deal, heal, reveal. So talk about that a little bit, and then we'll dive into, what we're going to talk about today.
Well, when we came up with the idea for the book, what we really wanted to do was have it be warm, girlfriendy in tone. So you feel like you're sitting down with a group of friends. You're surrounded by friends. There are 10 composite characters in the book so that no matter what your situation is, whether you left your husband, he left you, kids, no kids, stay at home, or, career woman, whatever it is, you can find someone whose story specifically you can relate to in the book. So I thought that was one important aspect to mention. But with the book itself, I feel like there's so many things initially when you get separated that feel so overwhelming, but that you have to deal with. And so we wanted to structure the book in the way that you mentioned, which deal is the first section, because before you can work on your feelings and getting unstuck and breaking bad patterns, I think you have to deal with the nitty gritty or the big rocks. And the big rocks are like the things that are kind of like that must be dealt with and moved. So that would be, telling your children if
Right.
where are you going to live? Do you need to move out of your house? Are you keeping the house? So we cover all of this in the deal section. How do you pick a lawyer? I had never hired one before. Wish I had hired someone different, like so many people. And what are the different types of divorce?
Yeah, absolutely.
Resources, and that's all covered in deal. How do you deal with, I call it the warm body replacement. That's the new woman or man that shows up on the scene right away and
Right.
says, what is going on? And it makes you feel like a lunatic. And it gives you, we give you some really like positive ways that other people have handled that and some coping techniques. Then we move on to heal, which is all about working on yourself, processing the whole split emotionally so that you don't get stuck.
Yeah.
Kind of, so doing the hard work, because I think the hard work is the emotional work. And that's like, what is the lesson here for me? There's always a lesson. Whether you chose to leave your partner or your partner left you or blindsided you, there are lessons there. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm just saying in every relationship, there's an opportunity to learn and grow. And we really encourage women to do that because I think it doesn't feel good. It feels bad and it's painful. And sometimes people want to sidestep that. I'll
Absolutely.
someone else, or I'm just going to ignore my feelings and eat a lot of chips and not journal,
Yeah.
or I'm going to do this or do that. And they put band-aids on things and they ignore things or they bottle up feelings, but it always finds a way. It always comes out eventually.
Absolutely. And then tell us a little bit about reveal quickly, and then we're going to jump back into heal and get into the nitty gritty about complaining and blaming and all of that stuff.
Awesome. Reveal is kind of like, oh, great, you've done so much hard work. This is the fun part. In Reveal, we talk about, are you ready to start dating again? And so for some people who have been maybe married or in a long-term relationship, they've never had to deal with any of the online dating and all of that stuff. So we have chapters about that. We have chapters about socializing again.
Yeah.
You feel like you have a scarlet D if you have been married and now you're separated. People don't invite you to things. And sometimes it's because they don't know what to do with you. They think what you have is catching
Yeah.
their own uncomfortability or their own vulnerability about their relationships. And, so we have a whole chapter on that. Strategies for going out alone, for sitting by your ex at the piano recital, for handling the kids' birthday parties and just different things because it is a whole thing. And there can be a lot of anxiety around that.
Mm-hmm.
Ex relationship, how to avoid talking about your ex and how to focus on the person that's in front of you.
Yeah.
And the very last chapter of the book is creating your own community and give women all of the steps and the do's and don'ts that we have come to realize from having our own group, so that no matter where they live, they can be encouraged to start their own divorce club that will support them and really help be a foundation for their new life as a single person.
I love that. I mean, as you're speaking, there's truly so much that we could talk about. I mean, there's so many topics that we could drill into with everything in that book. But today we're going to focus on what's really, I think, a very important topic, and something that I would say almost everyone going through a divorce experiences at least for a little while, which is, the getting caught in that blaming and complaining sort of area of healing. So, let's talk about that, and what that looks like.
I think the important thing to remember is that, like, when you are complaining about someone, you're essentially making someone else wrong. So when you make someone else wrong, that means you get to be right. So I think something to consider is that there is a benefit to complaining. It's a short-term benefit, but the benefit is you're wrong and I'm right.
So what does complaining look like? So let's get really clear for our audience. It's, he was supposed to pick up the kids at 5:00 and he didn't again. Or, what does that look like?
I think if all of your sentences start with, if your ex is a he, and then the next language is always, never, again, like very negative, and then also disempowering. So whenever you have conversations like, he always is late, he never picks up the kids on time, I'm stuck, like dealing with him, and you're giving the ex in this situation all of the power. You're making yourself a victim, and you're stuck in a cycle where you're not in control of your own life. And it all comes down to language, because the very same things could be happening and you could choose to deal with it a different way.
Yeah.
And choose to talk about it a different way. So one of the things we cover in the book is kind of almost the difference between venting and complaining. So venting is kind of like letting off steam. So maybe discussing an isolated incident. So it's almost like releasing pressure.
Yep.
And then for a finite amount of time. So it'd be like, hey guys, my ex really upset me today. I want to just say what he did and like hear you all kind of groan in appreciation and acknowledgement. But if I'm still talking in 3 minutes, please tell me to stop. Because sometimes we get in a cycle where it's not just about, to your point, that he was late today. It's every single thing he ever did that was, made you wrong. And you can kind of really get stuck in that mindset.
Yeah.
So venting is an isolated incident. It is for a short amount of time. And you can say to the person that you're talking to, please don't let me go off on a tangent. And one of the things we cover in the book, I call it emotional like poop bombs. You do not want to be the person, especially because divorce is not a sprint. It is a marathon. Yes. So imagining that you need support and empowerment and friendship, and you don't want to be the person who for 3 years is an emotional drain on your friends and your family. So
absolutely.
When you're thinking like, I'm going to vent versus complain, you're being a better friend and a better family member, because they have their own struggles and challenges in their life. And for them, just every time they see you, you don't want them to think, oh no, here she comes.
Yeah.
4 hours of everything, Bob did wrong. So when you can say, hey, I just really need to talk for like 5 minutes about what happened. And then like, let's switch gears and I want to hear about you. You're being responsible for what you're bringing to your relationship too.
Yeah, absolutely. Being responsible for your energy and being conscious about the way that you show up.
Yeah.
So complaining. Sorry. Yeah. So complaining is really the language, the words, the way you choose to speak and sort of present your situation. How is that different from blaming?
I think complaining is different from blaming, because blaming you're directing at your ex, and complaining is what you're sharing with all the people in your life, the people who are close to you that would call you how it's going or text you. So I think when you're blaming, you're taking one specific person and making them the bad guy who's responsible for whatever challenges you're currently having, which is very disempowering, giving all your power away. And when you are complaining, you're sharing very negative energy, sometimes for long periods of time, with the people that you're closest to.
Yeah. So I put up a couple questions this week, asking our audience and our community if they blame their ex for their divorce. And the conversation, it was a really amazing conversation. And there was a lot of feedback and a lot of people had a lot of things to say. And, reading through it, people have gone through some really hard things and are continuing to go through some really hard things and have had some awful things happen in their lives. And so I would say the majority of the response was, yes, I do blame my ex. So, let's talk about that a little bit because it's, I think that's where people get stuck. Well, I didn't choose to divorce. I didn't choose to cheat. I didn't choose to
money. Yes.
Yeah, all that stuff.
I think something to consider, and this takes a lot of time and a lot of redirecting on yourself whenever you feel yourself going down a path that you're trying to correct. I think it's important to remember that just because someone did all of these things, that if you're going to spend your life, your energy making them wrong, and saying that they're not wrong or that they didn't do things that are very challenging and hurtful, but if you continue to direct everybody has a limited amount of energy. If you are directing your energy at making that person wrong and trying to punish them, the real impact is you're punishing yourself first because you're living, I think, as someone who is a victim and is disempowered. And I think some people think, but they did so many horrible things, they don't deserve my forgiveness. And I think when you're choosing to not forgive someone or just not even accept that they did this and they did that and it was really hurtful and it was bad and it was wrong, but it's over and you're going to move past it. If you're not even in that kind of a neutral space, then all of your emotional energy is tied up with that person that you're no longer with, and that it's costing you something to continue to direct that at them. So when saying like, he doesn't deserve my forgiveness, or she doesn't deserve for me to forgive her for what she did to me, that's a personal choice, but you have to remember that you're hurting yourself first.
I think that's a really important question. What is it costing me? And I think when people take the time to really answer that honestly, what is it costing me to be angry, or what is it costing me to be resentful or blame? And you look at that, I don't know that people are really conscious of everything it's costing.
I don't think they are. And I'll share with you this story. So whenever I was separated, I went on a date with this guy who seemed lovely in our brief conversation. So we went out. Somehow it came up about his ex-wife, something, and he went off and he went off and he went off. His skin color changed from, neutral to a hot pink. He was clearly very angry. He called her horrible names. He was very disrespectful in the way he talked about her. And I don't know her. I don't know their story. But this is what he was bringing to a date. At the end of the date, he said, "I'd love to see you again. I had a great time." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think that's a good idea." And he said, "Well, why not?" And I said, "You're very angry at your ex, and I don't think you're in a place where you emotionally should be dating. I mean, it's a lot to watch how you're acting, talking about her, and I don't think, we should have a second date, and I wish you all the best, and I hope that you get through this." So I think sometimes our blind spots are what are triggering us. And those are the things that, we need to do the work, whether it's, with a divorce coach, in therapy, journaling, looking at past relationships and patterns, and really figure out like what's going on there and what lessons can we learn, and try to really get past that so that we can move on to a more neutral, empowered place. Because oftentimes people have a long laundry list of what they want in the next person that they're going to date, but they don't consider that they may be lacking in a lot of these qualities themselves because they haven't processed the pain of their divorce.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. You've said the word victim a couple times. So let's go there. What does that mean? What I think we hear it a lot. People hear, oh, I'm playing the victim, you're playing the victim. What does that mean to be the victim or play the victim?
I think if you're the victim, you think that you're living a life of a result of what someone else has done, said, or chosen versus what you have chosen or taken action to have. So you feel like things are out of your control. And I think the more that we can shift into energy where we are in control, even if in control is just neutral and powerful, then the better you're going to feel. I think sometimes people are in relationships with someone who's emotionally abusive, or a lot of women in my group struggle with, they were in relationships with narcissists.
Yep.
And those types of people seem to specialize in make wrong, as I call it. So if you have been on the receiving end of somebody who's trying to make you feel bad or wrong for years and years and years, I think we need to recognize that it's going to take a while to shift out of that. And that so when we feel like, oh, I'm going to get smaller, I'm going to be more quiet, I'm not going to stand up for myself, because we're used to being on the receiving end of that negative energy, that the very first time you say, no, that's not acceptable, you will feel an energetic shift within yourself. And that's not being mean. It's not
Right.
being fully back. It's standing up for yourself and rebuilding your self-esteem.
You might
One neutral and like strong comment at a time.
you might feel a little uncomfortable that first time, like you've done something totally wrong.
No. Like,
Yeah.
but my ex is going to just do this. What am I going to do? Then he said he's going to call the cops, or, there's always a lot of drama in those types of power struggle relationships. And I gave this woman advice in the group. I said, what does your parenting plan say? She said, it says 12 o'clock, for example. And I said, then you simply say to him, the parenting plan that we spend months and thousands of dollars agreeing to, lawyers, says 12 o'clock. I'll see you at 12 o'clock. That's it. And he's like, no, but I blah, 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 blah. It's just words. And you repeat yourself. Again, the parenting plans, they're looking for fuel to add to the fire. Don't give them fuel. They know how to push your buttons. Just be neutral and strong. And you'll be surprised. By them getting a different energy from you, now they have to switch their tactic.
Right.
And she wrote to me, she said, I never would have stood up for myself before. I can't believe it worked.
Right.
I said, and how do you feel? And she said, like a new person.
Yeah. So it's a stretch though, for some, because you don't know what you don't know, right? I always say this, like, we just don't know what we don't know. And so when you've been in a pattern for a very long time, you've had some really awful things happen in your life. Mm-hmm. You respond in the way that you have responded throughout time. And unless you're taught something different, you just don't know.
You have to start reprogramming yourself.
Right. Exactly. And so, what I think I want to go to this. So let's go into accountability, because I think what happens is there's this feeling among people that if they let go of being the victim and they quote unquote take the blame, or if they forgive, then they're quote unquote taking the blame. They're saying it was their fault. They're, owning all of the wrongness. Mm-hmm. And so they don't, that's like a block, it kind of keeps them stuck in that place of being a victim. So let's talk about accountability and what that really means.
We think it's like fault and responsibility, right? So fault is, this tree fell on my house in the bad storm. That didn't happen. I'm just saying. That's not my fault. That was Mother Nature, act of God. But it is my responsibility to call the electric company, call my homeowner's insurance, call Friendly Tree Service, and clean it up.
Yeah.
So I think like, this is our lives. We only get one. Like, if there's a person who's trying to make us feel bad, or, kind of be a ruiner, maybe, like with this negative energy, we have to look at that and be like, I don't want this in my life. How am I going to reprogram myself, work on myself? Like, what can I do to take ownership of my life so that I can live and feel good about my choices? And I think when you just shift a little, or even a baby step, because it is a big process, especially if you've been in that kind of a relationship for years and years and years, when you can start to stand up for yourself a little bit, when you can feel like you are independent of them. So sometimes it comes down to money. If I don't do this, they won't give me my child support. They'll try to, or they won't give me my alimony. You have to figure out, like, what can I do to take care of myself, whatever that means for each person. I know one of the things that I was doing that was not helping, this is just a smaller example, but it was something that I didn't really realize it until I got it. Like you said, you don't know what you don't know. My ex, would say things, and if he was showing up in a very neutral way, he would just say something. And sometimes I had these like snarky comments and one-liners, and that would just, because I had all this built up anger, due to the divorce. And I had to realize that while that might be fun for me to say, because I thought I was so witty and funny in the moment, it's not helping anything. Like, that's actually making it worse,
Right.
Gave the kids a bath. Like, oh, is there a parade going by in your honor? Like, oh, how? And I'm like, I'm being a jerk. And I want a better relationship with him. I want a strong co-parent. So you know what? If that is what I hold to be true, if that's what I want to be accountable for, then there's no room for me to be a jerk.
Right.
You have to figure out, like, what do you want? So many of us don't know, and and take on the fact that when we let go of being so mad at this other person, that it is really, really scary, because who are you without all of that anger that you're so used to holding on to, and so used to having that direct your interactions with that person? Who are you without all that anger?
Yeah, absolutely.
And who are you without that person? And now is the time to really revisit that and take a look at your choices, because maybe you don't want to live in New Jersey anymore.
Right.
If you want to go back to school. I mean, I think that you have to remember that whether it's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 20, you are not the same person that you were when you chose to marry, whoever you're separating or divorcing from now. Maybe your goals have changed.
Yeah.
It's okay. And this is a great time. This is reinvention time. This is time to cut all your hair off or get hair extensions.
Right.
Whatever
Change the color.
this is the time to say, like, like, you know what? I don't have to live here. I don't have to do this. I could have a new job. I could, pick up my passion for making clay pots. Whatever it is, now you're also going to have more free time. If you have children and you're sharing the parenting time, you might have 2 or 3 days a week that you never had before if you were really kind of the sole provider for the children. Yeah. So it's a good time to figure out, like, how can I take this time and fill it in a positive way that's going to, like, shore me up.
So yeah, and so accountability is really not about taking the blame or assigning the fault to yourself or letting your ex off the hook or whatever it's called. It's really letting yourself off the hook and giving yourself the power to create in your life.
And I think the other A word that's really important is acceptance. Because if you are struggling with, but he or but she, and then going off on a tangent of everything that they have done wrong, or if that is what the majority of your conversations are like, then you're still very much not accepting that this relationship is over. And one of the ways I think it can hurt to think this, but it's sometimes helpful, is this person that I'm directing almost all my waking hours to energetically, are they doing the same to me?
Right.
Or are they the ones who've moved on and now have a girlfriend named Trish in a convertible, and they're not thinking about me and what's best for me at all? I spend all my time and energy thinking about them.
Right.
I think the other thing people think is, but he's happy now. Like, why is he happy? Or he seems so happy without me. And that there's enough happiness to go around. Someone else being happy, even if it's for 3 weeks or 6 weeks, doesn't mean you don't get to be happy too. I think you every time you feel yourself going on the but he or but she tangent, you have to say, well, what do I want? What's going on with me right now? What did I do in this relationship that I wish I wouldn't have done? What are the lessons so that whenever I feel emotionally strong enough and ready, I can go out and date and meet someone else and not bring any of that stuff with me? And I can show up as Jill 2.0, or I can show up as an evolved version of myself who's learned the lessons so that when I do go on that date and somebody says, like, so you're divorced, what happened? Because people love to ask, that.
Oh, of course.
One of the things we say in the book is you should have a 2 sentence, like 1 minute or less answer. That's it. You just met. Because if not, your whole date is going to be derailed with like that negative energy. So you say, well, I got married, of course, thinking it would last forever, but we grew apart and it's been challenging, but I'm getting through it. Bing, that's it. That's all you want to talk about it. Now, down the line, if you actually get in a relationship with someone, of course, there are probably a lot more conversations to be had about your emotional state and how vulnerable you can be to another person and how serious you want to date them. But in the beginning, you need to keep the focus on fun and just getting to know them.
Yeah,
And then get to know you.
absolutely. And you can only do that from a place of being empowered and acceptance and accountability.
Right. You do not want to have the ghost of your ex at the date with you. It never goes well.
Yeah. There's a couple of comments that I'm just going to look at. Let's see. Catherine says she was with him for 42 years, so it's very hard for her.
Of course.
And 32 years, another person, 32 years married. Pat's 71. She was a military wife for 22 years. She did it all. But she said she's proud of herself for taking charge.
I think that in my experience, from what I have seen, the people who seem to have the hardest challenge with getting past some of the emotional issues of divorce and separation would be anyone who feels blindsided and betrayed. Because
Absolutely.
if you have made the choice to divorce someone, then it stands to reason that you spent a lot of time internally thinking about that and then working through your emotions and coming to terms with that and thinking about the ramifications and then, having that conversation with your partner. Well, if you're the partner and you think everything is going great and you think you're on the same page and you think everyone's honoring their marriage vows, when you find out that that's not the case, it's like someone pulls the rug out from under you.
Absolutely. And I think that's where accountability gets kind of difficult, and that's where people really kind of dig their heels in and say, well, I didn't know. I was a good wife or I was a good husband. I did everything for them. I thought he was happy. I thought she wanted to be married to me. How am I accountable? How am I to blame or at fault
Right.
for anything that happened?
Well, they're not to blame or at fault.
Right.
They're still the one, if you're using the pull the rug out analogy, they're still the one that's on the floor and they have to figure out how to stand up and dust themselves off and make the best of the rest of their lives, because that responsibility is, frankly, it's always on us to make the best of our lives and to make ourselves happy. It's never on another person. But no, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying I think that that's the best way to get through it, is to say, well, you know what? I didn't choose this, but I am proud to go back in time and find out, like, in your marriage, like, what choices did you make that you're proud of? You still get to be proud of those.
Right.
Did you support that army husband through all of those years and all of the moves that must have entailed, and helped your children get adjusted in every school district? No one is taking away any of the things that you did. All of those things are still your accomplishment, and you still get to be proud of them. And if there's another person who didn't value that, that's their loss. They will have with that choice and probably that regret when they have a realization or like a mindset shift and see what they have done, and how they have negatively impacted their family perhaps, or they're going to have to figure out how to live with themselves and their choice. But the only choice for us is to figure out, like, how are we going to be the best version of ourselves? How are we going to get through it?
So that's actually my next question. So how can people shift out of it? Because I think a lot of people can see, okay, here's where I am, here's where I would like to be, but how do I do it? I mean, I can remember being there myself in that obsessive loop that just keeps going over and over, and you just can't seem to get yourself off that wheel. What can people do to start getting themselves out?
I think that you have to deal with the things that you need to deal with. So of course, each specific relationship is different, but like whatever are the things that like you need to make choices about, don't bury your head in the sand and deal with them, because it's for your future self. For example, if I was feeling super disempowered and so emotionally upset that I am just agreed to anything that my ex wanted, instead of getting a lawyer, even though it's hard, and reading through proposed agreements, even though it's hard, standing up for what I want because I know how hard the agreements are to change. That's kind of just being involved and being active. I think that that's an important step, because I think if you are in a place of being very emotionally drained, I felt like I had the fortitude of a crumpled Kleenex, at that time when you're just like thrown in the frying pan of divorce. But you have to stay in it and with those things and deal with stuff. And I think once you feel like, I know where I live, like your basic needs are being met. I know where I'm going to live. I know how I'm going to have a budget. I'm going to have enough food. I have a car. I can live on either, what I'm getting from my spouse or what I'm getting from my job. Like once you have those kind of needs, those basic needs met, then I feel like you can take the next step and work on the emotional process. And I think we have to give ourselves, like, treat ourselves with kid gloves. And no, it is not simple. Just one day, we're not going to snap out of it and feel better. It is almost like a grieving process, like a death, because it's the death of a marriage. It takes time.
Yeah, it absolutely does. There's a couple people. So Kim says, she says hi from Kim. She says, I guess she's dealing with her husband who's going through a midlife crisis. She's
Okay.
asking for some information. And Kim, if you can ask a more specific question, we might be able to help you. But, I mean, I think this brings up an issue, though. It's, she's in a place where she doesn't want what's happening around her to be happening. It's somebody else's issue, and it's affecting her life.
Well, then what can she control would be what I would say. I don't know the specifics of the situation, of course, but if it's that, maybe her husband's saying, I want to go out with my friends. Maybe he's picked up random new hobbies and he's never home. She still can say, I understand you're going through something right now, but I'm your wife. We're in this relationship, and I don't think it's appropriate for you to, I'm making this up because I don't know, but come home at 11 o'clock 3 nights a week. That doesn't work for me. You still can say, you still have a say. So even though this other person is having these challenges, maybe he wants to date, maybe he wants an open marriage. I don't know, but she can still say, I don't want these things. I'd like you to go to therapy. Or she can say, I'm not happy with the choices that you're making, but it seems like you're struggling. I'm willing to stay in this marriage if you're willing to come 2 times a week to counseling with me. I think it's important to say she doesn't know, she no longer has a voice in the relationship, it seems, because this current issue of his midlife crisis is his go-to excuse for whatever behaviors he's exhibiting that she's not pleased with.
Right.
She can say, I love you. I value our relationship. I do not want a divorce, but your current choices of X, Y, and Z aren't working for me. This is not acceptable behavior. So the choices are, you can either stop doing this or that. You can come to therapy with me. or we're going to have some real problems. And that's not her delivering an ultimatum. That's her being an active part of this relationship and speaking her truth and stating what is not acceptable to her. I
Which
think,
I think takes courage. That's a scary thing to do.
but if she does these things and then he says, you know what, I didn't realize the impact of my choices. Yes, I'll go to therapy, or yes, I'll stop doing these things. Then the reason that they're going to have this next level relationship is because she's speaking her truth and he's hearing her, and they're working on that. I mean, the person that you marry is never the same person that you're with 6 months from now, a year from now. People grow. As humans, what we like to do is put each other in little boxes.
Yeah.
That's easy and manageable. Like, he always came home at 5 o'clock. He always came home. So that's it. In our minds, now we just associate this person comes home at 5 o'clock. That is not how anyone has the best human experience. So I think it's like, hold on loosely, but don't let go. How
Yeah.
do we always encourage our partner to grow and change and continue to flourish as a human while staying in a connected partnership? Because it feels like you're making yourself very vulnerable when you're letting someone grow and change, because it feels most comfortable when we're putting someone in a little box that they're willing to stay in.
Right. Absolutely.
So I don't know what her husband's going through.
Well, she says that he's completely changed after 22 years together. She says nobody else's happiness matters but his, and he's out to seek that, and that only. I feel like I don't know him anymore. Maybe I never did.
So has she had a conversation with him where she's kind of saying, this is the impact of your choices on me. I am feeling, like you aren't interested in our family anymore, or that our happiness, isn't important, and that you aren't really in this. Is that right? Like, is that what's going on? And then state what she wishes the outcome were to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and Kim, you can keep talking to us if you just keep typing. We'll continue talking to you. I think too, what I see in her response too is all this meaning behind his actions that we don't know if it's true. You
Right.
know, it's true in her mind. It's
Right.
how she feels, but it might not be his truth.
Right.
So just, noticing that in her comments here.
What we always love to do, again, this is another human trait, is we like to fill in all the blanks with what we don't know, with what we imagine. I think it's the same reason why if somebody said, I'm going to call you and let's go on a date, before that person has arrived to pick me up for the date, I've already imagined what a great date. I know what I'm going to wear, how my hair looks. And then if it's not how I imagined it, meanwhile, that person has no idea what's going on in my imagination, there's a disappointment.
Yeah.
I think that being self-expressed or asking the questions, like, I'm feeling like maybe you mean this, like, is that really going on? Like, ask difficult questions to get clarity, because you can't ever solve problems if you don't know what they are.
Yeah. Is it Tony Robbins who says the quality of our life is determined by the questions that we're willing to ask?
I don't know, but that's a great quote.
I think it's Tony Robbins, but it's exactly what you're saying.
I think too, like, what can she do to protect herself? So what can she do to feel okay right now? I don't know what those answers are because I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but I think it's an important thing to consider. When you're in a relationship with someone, and no relationship is easy or perfect, there's always usually something that you're trying to work on or work through.
Yeah.
What do you do to make yourself feel okay about your choices? Sometimes it is stating your truth. And if that person isn't willing to meet that need that you have, then you have to be willing to not be in that relationship, if that means you're going to suffer as a person because of that, or because of this need that is not being met.
I think that's huge what you just said. And I just want to highlight it. You have to be willing to not be in that relationship, which means you have to be willing to put yourself first.
Right. When you value yourself, your value to your partner goes up. Because think about it. If somebody offered you like a piece of candy, and then they always gave candy. The candy was always there. Would you want it as much as the candy that you did not know if you were going to get? So when you're saying, I value myself, I'm this, and that, I value myself. I would love to be in a relationship with you. But here are the requirements for me. The requirements are this. Maybe it's honesty. The requirements are monogamy. The requirements are financial partnership. I don't know. But if you're willing to say, these are my requirements, then you've just given someone a blueprint on how to make you happy and meet your needs.
Absolutely.
You never say those things. They don't know. I think oftentimes our tendency is to give other people or love other people the way that makes us feel loved. Like, I'm a words person. So I want to call everybody like schmoops-a-doodle, lever-doodle, do-do-do-do-do. And that's me showing love in a silly way. But, maybe somebody that I'm with, maybe all they really care about is actions. And
Right.
if I just hung up their coat for them and like handed them a Coke with some ice cubes when they walked in the door, they would have felt like she's really taking care of me. So you have to have these conversations in relationships. What makes you feel loved? What makes you feel respected? What scares you? Like, what's the most uncomfortable part of the vulnerability of being in a relationship? Is it that everybody else in your life left you and you're always afraid I'm going to leave you?
Yeah.
Having those kinds of really next level conversations, I think, improves the quality of our relationships so much.
Yeah. Advocating for yourself and negotiating for yourself.
Yeah, because no one knows how to make us happy unless we tell them.
Yeah.
And we have to be the one who has a standard. We have to have a standard that we accept. And that if we're not getting it, we have to make the choice that then our value is more important than this other person's value. And sometimes that means you have to leave the relationship.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Kim is saying, yes, she's had conversations with him and their family, and he doesn't care. He doesn't want to hear any of it. He just gets angry. And then she goes on to say he also has been having an affair for 3.5 years with a woman he dated when he was 20.
So obviously it's more complicated, I'm sure, than just these 3 sentences. And I'm so sorry, Kim, that you're going through this. But what does she actually want? She wants it to go back to the way it was, right? So I think that's probably the answer. She wants the family that she had 3 years ago and the man she had 3.5 years ago.
Right. Things not to change.
But they have changed.
Right.
So today is her request that he no longer see that woman. Is it that he go to therapy with her? Is it that he move out of their house? She's not being respected as his wife and his partner. And she has to be the one who demands that respect.
Right.
Because
the negotiation
itself is really going to impact her self-esteem. And she probably will only realize how much it has once she has had some space, from this relationship, or once he has changed his behaviors and is now more back to the way he was before. She'll only then realize how painful it was to be living the way she has for the past 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Kim, really advocating and for yourself, negotiating for yourself, getting clear on what you need right now to happen and what your boundaries are, and then being willing to state those and honor those, I think, is really what Jill is saying. So what happens when, let's get back to this kind of victimhood. I don't know if that's a word, victimhood. What happens when people shift out of that, when they are able to take those steps and shift from being the victim to being accountable and taking ownership for their lives?
I think that there's great freedom in feeling like, also it's daunting. I am the only one responsible for me. Like, what?
Right.
So I am the only one responsible for me. So I think it's just however you're saying it that day, but it's the same.
Yeah.
I choose what I'm going to do, how hard I'm going to work, how much money I'm going to save, where I'm taking my kids on vacation, if I want to buy a house, if I want to rent a house. I'm the grown up. It's just me, an independent person. And I think that it feels sometimes like it's a big adjustment to think like, what do you mean I don't have someone else that's like I can just like foist these things on? But sorry. I think that there's freedom in feeling like you're the one who gets to choose, and you're the one who gets to make choices that maybe you wouldn't have made before that relationship, but those are available to you now.
Yeah, your life really becomes your own. Your successes and your mistakes, they're yours.
Yeah, there's this great quote about like don't use your mistakes as something to decorate your past, something like that, but use them as stepping stones to where you want to go. Like,
Right.
didn't work. Like, you're not going to be a dental hygienist. Okay. What else could you be? And I
Yeah.
think when you live your life, like, you're responsible and you get to make wild choices and live into what you want, even if there's a setback or even if something doesn't go the way you planned, you're still moving in the direction of your goals and dreams. So you have to know what those are to ever get there. And I think it's being active and proactive instead of being reactive. And it's scary, but it's also empowering. Like, I mean, I separated and I just thought, I'm going to write a book. I had never written a book. I just decided I was going to. It needed to happen. And I was going to figure out a way to do that. And I did. Like, to me, that's kind of cool.
No, that's cool.
I talked to somebody about turning the book into a TV show. And we're actually like shooting our sizzle reel on Tuesday. He's like, this is a great idea. Like, you really could help people. I know. And
That's amazing.
all of those things happened because before they could happen, I had to believe them.
Yeah.
And then I had to make choices and actions to get there. So, whatever that is for you, you have to just have a big plan and start taking steps to get there. And don't be afraid to do it because this is your chance to reinvent yourself. This is your chance to learn and grow from this really, really challenging experience. It's almost like shedding the stuff that doesn't serve you and finding the best of the stuff within you and the strength you didn't know you had and taking that and like squaring your shoulders and being like, I got this.
Yeah.
And you'll realize, I think, how powerful you are.
I agree. That's beautiful. The way you said all of that is so empowering, inspiring, and beautiful. Um, there was one comment that I did want to acknowledge. Stuart earlier, he said, I guess his partner broke up with him or ended their marriage over the phone. And so, his question is, who's accountable then? And, what I'm getting from that is that's a sweeping the rug, what we were talking about before.
It's horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
it's okay to say that all of these things are horrible. That's a horrible thing that happened to him. His partner is accountable for her choice to end their significant relationship, a marriage, over the phone. She will have to live with that down the line. What if the next person that she's with breaks up with her over the phone? And maybe only then will she say, oh my God, I can't believe I did that to my husband. But we're not responsible for her choices or the aftermath of her choices. So for Stuart, he has to say, this was a horrible shock, and I need to treat myself like with TLC and recognize that my whole life has the ground beneath me has shifted. I need to give myself time. I need to take care of myself. And then I need to slowly shift my mindset into accepting that this has happened, even though I didn't want it, even though I didn't see it coming, that this did happen. And I have to start living in the now. Because I think a lot of the times it's like we use all this past tense language about all of these things and how everything was and all of these things that happen. And all of it's true, but it's not happening anymore. Now here we are wherever we're at in our lives, and that's what we're accountable for. How we're getting from here where we are to where we want to go or where we need to go. That's the part that we're accountable for. We're not accountable for how someone treated us.
Right.
We are accountable for the here and now and how we're going to show up tomorrow.
Awesome. So good. I mean, I think that's such a huge separation for people. It's like you're not accountable for what happened. You're accountable, though, for what you do with what happened.
Right. It's like the fault and the responsibility. It's not his fault that she chose a callous way to break up with him. That's horrible. But it is his responsibility to find the strength within himself to do whatever he needs to do to get through it. and to make choices to get himself through it, and to find what his next chapter is and write his own happy ending.
Yeah.
This is not it for him. There's a whole life of all these great things that are going to happen, but he has to figure out how to write those chapters. This is just one chapter. What's the next one going to be?
Yeah. Something you and I were talking about before we jumped on the call was our language and the words that we use, and just how important those words are. And it actually came up in a comment before this morning at some point, and I don't remember who it was or what the exact words were, but basically, he was saying, I will never be financially successful again because of my divorce. And
they just put that energy into the world, and then
right. And just how important that is, because our minds work really hard to prove us right and create whatever it is we believe and say. Right. And so, I just kind of wanted to touch on that, because I think when you say we get caught up in, what's happened, it's a lot of our language around that keeps us stuck in where we are.
Yeah, I think the language, like when we talk about the past, we and everyone does this. Like, think about like your high school boyfriend or your high school girlfriend. It's so easy to say everything that was great about them, or like your first love.
Yeah.
You forget like all the stuff they did that was kind of like, what? So I think people they romanticize the past sometimes, because it's idealistic to kind of sometimes go back and look at the past and wax romantic about what might have been or what should have been. So if we fall into this coulda, shoulda, woulda cycle, right? This shouldn't have happened to me because I made her coffee every day, or it shouldn't have happened to me because, and all of that stuff is just spinning wheels about the past. And I think it's important to use positive language. Today I am going to be, and focus on the here and now and not the past, and use empowering language about the future, instead of like, I might go to the gym if one of the issues is, I want to get physically strong to help support myself through the divorce. Instead of saying I might go to the gym, say today I choose to make the time to go to the gym because that's important to me. Which person is going to go to the gym?
Right.
Probably the last one, and I always say, with Yoda, there is no try.
Yeah.
You're going to try. Say, I intend to. And you will probably are much more likely to accomplish that thing. So I think with the language, the other thing is, if we say negative, bad things about ourselves, especially to other people, what are we waiting for? This person who doesn't know me that well to be like, oh my gosh, no, that's not you at all. You're great. They don't know you. You should think you're great. Like, you have to be the one who's like, again, like standing up for yourself and being responsible for your energy and your choices, and be like, you know what? Like, today I did this and this and this, and that's pretty good. And I think the other thing, this is something I mentioned in the book that I found helpful in the beginning. I was someone who suffered with being overwhelmed. I have two girls, and they were in kindergarten and preschool when I was separated. And then I was just going back to work, and it felt like a lot on top of the emotional process of the separation. And what I would actually say out loud, and I still say out loud to this day sometimes, is, Jill, you're doing a great job. And it's like, it shifts my energy. And the other thing I say about being overwhelmed is, I get to have all of these great things in my life. I get to have a busy career and two happy, healthy children that I have to run around to places. I get to have a house that I take care of, and a cat who sometimes does bad things that I have to clean up. Like, I get to have these things, and they make me very busy, but I get to have all of them. And I think sometimes if we can just, again, it's like reframing things. Oftentimes the things that we're complaining about are the things that if we didn't have, we would complain that we wanted.
Yeah.
I think that's something to really like think about.
Yeah.
So I think using language and controlling the language that comes out of our mouth, how we talk about our lives, it's a powerful way to show up in the world.
Yeah.
And then you're emanating this positive energy, and people pick up on that.
Yeah, and then the people that you attract into your life and the people who are in your life sort of fall into suit in a different way.
Because it's like the whole like attracts like, I think, with energy. So if somebody was looking to date and they were putting themselves out there, or even to get hired for a new job, if you're showing up and you're depressed and you're really sad, really angry, that's what's going to connect to you and pull to you. And that's what we're trying to take steps to move past.
Yeah.
So I think being aware of that. I'm not saying it's easy,
No.
but first step is being aware and be like, oh, maybe I actually was the one who like brought all the energy down at dinner. And like think through and like, how could you have done it differently? And try to self-correct and make different choices.
Yeah. Love that. So we could talk forever. I feel like I have we could literally sit here for hours, but we have to wrap up. So, and I feel like you possibly already answered this, but I'm going to ask it again anyway. If you had 2 or 3 sentences to sort of sum up your message and what you want people to take from today and from your work, your book and everything you've done and your group, what would that be?
Well, I think just to focus on today's message, which was around the blaming and the victim, I think as hard as it is, remember that you're hurting yourself before you're hurting that other person by being mad at them or blaming them. And I think when you can actually kind of have that click and you really get that, then I think you see the value in moving beyond that.
Yeah.
Which I have been there. I could tell you stories. Like I know how hard it is. But whenever you actually get it, like, oh, I'm hurting myself more than I'm hurting anybody else, then you can just kind of like, okay, like, and the importance of moving past that, it changes. And I think that that's a good goal to have when you are in it and you're so mad at them. You can't even, like, they do not deserve your forgiveness. Like, that's the attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, as mad as you are at them, you're impacting yourself tenfold with all of that negative energy and keeping yourself stuck mad at them. So I think that's something to consider. And then the other thing would be, find people you can talk to about this. Try to make a group or a club, even if it's 3 other people, and you get together once a week and have coffee or go for a power walk. And it's like, and then have some rules around it.
Yeah.
Because the goal is you want to leave that group or that meeting feeling better than when you got there, right? So again, there's ways to do that, but you can just say everybody gets 5 minutes. Share, repeat. Share, repeat. And then at the end, like, what are you looking forward to this week? What have you learned? What have you experienced that I should look out for? Or how can what I'm going through help you? And really support each other and connect with each other so that you don't feel like you're going through it alone, because you're not. There are people everywhere who are struggling with the same issues. So go find some of those people and help each other. Because you might find, like I did, like these divorced moms, like they laid the foundation for my life as a single mom post-divorce. We go on vacations together. Like it was so valuable to start that group.
Yeah. Powerful. Such great information and advice and wisdom for everyone that's been listening and everyone that's going to watch. How can people find your book and connect with you, if they want to further for today?
The book is available, I think, at almost all national retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that good stuff. We have a website, www.optimistguidetodivorce.com, and you can reach Suzanne Riss, the co-author, or myself at our email address, which is optimistguidetodivorce@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I have truly enjoyed this hour talking to you and connecting with you and just getting to sort of soak you up. So I appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much. This has been great. I appreciate it.
And to everybody who watched us, thank you for taking the time to let us into your world and your journey. And if you have any comments or questions or anything like that, continue to put them in the comment section. We will pop in and answer whatever we can. Jill, I will alert Jill, and she'll pop in as well and communicate with you too. So thank you, everybody. Have a really wonderful day. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.